what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today I want to talk to you all a little bit about the upcoming Season 4 in World of Warcraft. What's changing loot-wise, system-wise, tier gear. There's new dungeons. The Shadowlands ones are actually going away. And then a little bit about some items that for casters could be and probably should be on your radar to acquire from the new dungeons. Now, PTR has been up for a while with 9.2.5 on it, but Season 4 is not a part of 9.25. We got that patch 2-ish weeks ago, I think, right around there. But Season 4 is coming later on. We don't know. My guess is sometime early August, just due to the fact they probably want to give guilds some time to get cutting edge, with Anduin being nerfed a million times, the Jailer being a wall, Anduin being a wall, and Raglan being, 100-ish wipes. And we'll see where all that goes. But I think it's good to prepare and look towards Season 4 a bit, if you're looking at maybe doing some plus in it or raiding, because hopefully you enjoyed the raids this expansion, because all three are coming back. I'm more than excited to jump into SOD. Again, yeah. With all that being said, any add-ons or weak wars see in the video, link down below to my Twitch, all for free there if you want to grab them. Swing by anytime, hang out, ask any questions, feel free to do so. Also, one big shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times for all support on Patreon. If you'd like to support on Patreon, there should be a link up here, as well as down in the video description below. So, first off, let's jump right into it, talking about the new dungeons, why the Shadowlands dungeons are going away, and then get a bit into the gearing and eventually some hot items that are coming back that you should really be looking to obtain. Alrighty, so jumping right into the dungeon part. Number 1, all of these dungeons here that you see, DOS Halls, Tyrannocide, Plaguefall, Sanguine Depths, Spires, Necrotic Wake, and Theater of Pain, they are all gone in Season 4. Tazavesh, Upper and Lower, Soleas, and Streets, it's not a good dungeon in the first place, whatever. They're staying around in the Mythic Plus circuit, but all the other ones here, all of these Shadowlands dungeons are gone from the Mythic Plus circuit, except for Tazavesh. This is apparently announced months ago. I didn't hear about it, and nobody in chat did either. It was like mind-blowing to me. But either way, those are all gone. Now, as far as Mythic Plus is concerned, the big thing here is that you can still run these currently at Mythic 0 on PTR and get the actual gear to drop at Valor Upgrade 1 out of 12. I'll have some links to these articles down below. It's hard to find info on Season 4 right now because it's very, very scarce. They haven't really done a whole lot with it on PTR. But currently, there's item level 262 gear dropping in baseline Mythic Zeros with a Valor upgrade level of 1 out of 12. So that means theoretically that if you want a Ruby, let's say Ruby does still indeed sim highest for you, even though it, isn't really obtainable in Season 4, you can still sort of get it if you go in there and kill Kulturok once a week and try and get it drop. Now, you have to go from Valor level 1 to 12, which is like 3k Valor in the first place. You get one shot once a week to farm it up, and that's for any item, whether it's Ruby, Changeling, this chest, this ring, whatever you want. You have one shot, one time per week in Mythic 0. Personally, I don't like that. I assume it'll probably just be fixed and patched out because that's sort of gross and sort of defeats the purpose of like, hey, new dungeons, new gear. Let's break the meta of Ruby farm every single season. So either way, that's important to keep in mind. We're not sure. We'll learn more in the next coming weeks, I'm sure. But the big thing is that there are 6 other dungeons that are coming into the Mythic Plus cycle. WoD has 2, Grimrail, Depot, Iron Docks. Iron Docks was an incredible dungeon to run. We ran it on PTR like a month ago. Grimrail was fine. We ran it with Sanguine and Quaking. There's links down below, or I guess in the channel somewhere if you want to watch the VODs of those. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I have no idea how Grimrail beat Everbloom or Skyreach. Even like up Blackrock Spire or Shadow Moon. But either way, Grimrail and Iron Docks are going to be the 2 from WoD we have in the Mythic Plus cycle, which is cool. We never had them before in WoD. Plus wasn't a thing until Legion. As far as Legion itself is concerned, Karazhan is returning. Upper Karazhan and Lower Karazhan. A lot of iconic bosses. Kara's been around for a long time. Aran's Relaxing Ruby comes to mind as as part of the iconic items from this actual dungeon. If you never ended up getting the mount, well, you got a chance to get it again now in relevant content, which is pretty cool. And then we have BFA. BFA, Mechagon is returning. So Upper and Lower, Junkyard, and whatever the other one was called, the upstairs one, whatever it was. What comes to mind, number 1, Mechagon rings, Fire Mage bracers. There are things in Upper and Lower Mechagon that you're probably going to want to acquire, whether you're a Fire Mage or just somebody who's looking for a ring set, because those rings are pretty powerful. So personally, I'm a fan of the dungeon set we have for Mythic Plus in Season 4. I think it's cool. Breaks up some of the actual, I guess, monotony of running the same Shadowlands dungeons 10,000 times over and over and over. But the unfortunate part is that currently when it comes to like WoD things, we're not really sure what's going to happen with loot in these, because the loot in WoD is interesting. So for example, Grimrail Depot. This is just a Warlock filter. Not all classes. There are 5 belts from the first boss, and like 6 rings, like 10 rings actually. Second boss has like 8 necks and 6 chests. And the cool thing is, if I go to Iron Docks, I would assume the same chest and the same rings they're actually in here on a different boss. So loot was like shared across dungeons in WoD. So I have no idea. For example, let's go to Grimrail. This is the first boss with every class. Look at all the loot in here. This is not a raid. This is the one boss in one dungeon. Even as far as like this filtering for Warlock is concerned, for example, right? Because Warlock, there's like 13 items in the first boss, if not more. So I would assume Blizz trims down the items to drop per boss to make acquiring certain items a bit easier to get. We'll talk about that a little later on in the video. But it's going to be interesting because number one, the eye level is still 48, which means I can't really put them into Simcraft and run sims on them and see what's BIS. We'll get to that later on. But that's one of the big things I want to see what happens with Season 4 and PTR is, hey, Grimrail and Iron Docks, what are we doing with this loot? Because there are some items in here, some weapons. There's a wand, for example. There's a trinket, which is pretty spicy. We'll get to that in a little while. Some items that could be pretty good if they go live in the form that they were in the past. So we'll see where that goes. But the big thing as far as eye level is concerned, from what I've seen, I've had to scour the internet for this too. From what I've seen, this appears to be the current eye level for things that are dropping in Season 4. Baseline Mythic 0, Mythic 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Mythic 15. At the end of the dungeon, 288 eye level, and this is Great Vault 304. This could be off. I don't know. It's so hard to find this info right now because no one's really doing any PTR stuff because Season 4 is not really developed at this point. But at this point, this is what we got. So yeah, I hope we'll find out a bit more in the coming few weeks. But that's basically for dungeons. Big thing, let's get into tier gear, Dom shards, and the faded raids. Okay, I'm sure I scared everybody when I mentioned Dom shards. There are no Dom shards. We'll get that out of the way. Dom shards are gone. They were terrible. They didn't work out. Yeah, they're not here. They're disabled and gone, which is great. So the big question that I've had asked a lot in chat and things is, what is going on with tier gear? And I actually thought they hadn't clarified what's going on with it, but apparently they have clarified. So your 9.2 tier sets are still active in Season 4, and the creation catalyst will remain on with all of its accumulated charges. So that's big. Tier tokens won't be added to Castle Nathria and Sanctum, as you'll be able to upgrade any item you get to a higher eye level piece of tier, just like you can now on live right now. So number one that makes me wonder, okay, are they going to be in Faded Sepulcher? Because it sounds like they're going to be, so you can get them there, number one, from just Faded Sepulcher. And if you don't, can you take item level, like high eye level pieces or gear from previous raids, like Castle Nathria and Sanctum, which it does seem like you can, to the Catalyst and upgrade them, which it seems like you're going to be able to do. So getting into the actual item levels of the Faded raids. Now, Nathria was lower than Sanctum, and Sanctum was lower than Sepulcher, because Raid 1, Raid 2, Raid 3. But when the raids are faded, they will have the same item level. So here is Sepulcher, for example, Raid Finder. This is like the normal eye level for most of the bosses, and this is the final 3 in Sepulcher, Lords, Rygon, and Jailer. This is what the faded raids are going to be. So when Castle Nathria is faded for the week, it will be baseline 265 on Mythic, for Raid Finder, and then followed by 272, the final 2 bosses. Normal being 278 and 285, Heroic being 291 and 297, and Mythic being 304 and 311. The next week, when Sanctum becomes faded, Sanctum will have the exact same eye levels that you see here for the faded raids, then Sepulcher, and then back to Nathria, and it will rotate over and over and over. Now, one of the very interesting things they mentioned about the Catalyst is that it will end up retaining its charges for tier gear. So I'm going to assume that tier does indeed drop in Sepulcher, because it seems like it probably will. I would assume they want some source of faded gear dropping in the raid. They mentioned no Nathria and no Sanctum, but I would assume Sepulcher still has tier dropping, at the same eye level comparatively to whatever it's converted to here. So what I'm getting at is, when it comes to Sepulcher for Clothies, I'm a Warlock, right? We were actually able to go to Jailer and take, you have shoulders and you have chest from Lords of Dread, being here, and Raglan here, shoulders, chest. We're able to take Jailer gloves at 285, which is a higher eye level, and turn them into tier via the creation catalyst. So these gloves will also be a higher eye level. They will be 311, I believe. Yeah, 311 comparatively to 304 from the gloves that you get from Lehuvim. So just like how it was this tier, That appears to be the same way next tier, that the end bosses will have a higher eye level, so you can put them in the catalyst to make higher eye level tier. But interestingly enough, if you go back to the older raids, if you look at the last few bosses that have higher eye level, Kalamazi, shoulders. Now, this is domination gear, so not sure where that's going to go number one, but dom gear, or shoulders, I'm sorry, already covered, unfortunately, by Lords of Dread, right? But Sylvanas, a helm, they're at a higher eye level. Who drops helm? Anduin. Anduin is not a 285 piece or a higher eye level piece. So you could theoretically take the Sylvanas helm and put it in the catalyst and make a 4th higher eye level tier piece, right? Which only leaves legs, I believe. I don't remember Nathria. I don't believe higher eye level legs drop in Nathria. They didn't. But you can take 4 out of 5 tier pieces and put them in the catalyst if it works out this way, and make them at a higher eye level than what they drop at least 2 out of the 4 in the current Sepulchre Faded raid cycle. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, they've also touched a bit on being able to buy gear in the raids, because they want to test out a system like being able to target gear if you miss out on it. And this is important for the part of the video coming up. So let's say, for example, I don't get an item that I wanted for a long time. They're going to have vendors up, which I believe require 30 boss kills, 20 boss kills, and then 10 boss kills per quest they give. And I believe when you complete the quest, they give you a token to buy anything. You can buy a gavel, date this, old warrior soul, a hymnal, whatever you want that you tried to get from the raid and wouldn't drop. Because keep in mind, faded raids are once every 3 weeks, essentially. If you're looking for, let's say I want this right here. I don't know why I would. Let's say I want it. Let's say I want hymnal. Hymnal doesn't drop, right? Well, I gotta wait 2 more weeks. Well, not anymore. If you have the actual token, you can just go buy a hymnal. And once you buy it, you have the option, every boss kill that you get in Season 4 will drop a currency. When you have enough currency, you can use that to buy an item, to then upgrade the item, the hymnal, to heroic, and then mythic. So there's a bad luck, I guess, protection kind of system in there. You can only buy 3 items. And when you do, or I guess once you do, the vendors go away. But either way, I think it's good, because there are going to be items, hymnal's a great example, where you want it early on. You want it in general, right? And if you have bad luck, if we have 7 casters in the raid that all want hymnal, right? Haven't run sims on it, but it was a pretty good trinket back then. If you have hymnal groups, let's say you have 7 casters in the raid, maybe 1 drops per kill. Maybe a second one drops second kill. That's already a month, right? That's 6 weeks. But not if you can target it. You'll have a lot more early on. So with that being said, now that we've laid out the gist of Season 4 and everything, let's get into some items that might be worth looking at, targeting, and then going from there. So what's important to keep in mind when looking at Season 4 Mythic Plus gear, there's both Raid and Plus here, but when it comes to Mythic Plus, that gear is not purchasable, as far as we know from the vendors. It's only Faded Raid gear. Number 1 on the list, though, for me, in no particular order, is going to be from Iron Docks, Flesh Render. Flesh Render's Meat Hook is an item that I want to keep an eye on. Now, the eye level is level 48 on this. Current eye level is like 300 in Faded Raids, right? So it's very hard, number 1, with an item being this low to see how it scales up properly. You can input eye level 300 into raid bots, look what it gives you, but it's like 780 haste or something. And like, that's an insane amount of haste. Now, it also gives you a pretty low baseline amount of intellect. Intellect, I think, gave me like 78 or 80 at eye level 300, which obviously you can see the Ruby and Changeling here have 40 more. So we have to see what happens with item level on this actual trinket. But the big thing is that, once again, unless Ruby is farmable at, Mythic 0 level with, rank 1 out of 12 Valor-wise, this is a trinket. It's 2 minutes, baseline intellect, on use, baseline haste. These are the kind of trinkets I like, not the weird ones that draw out souls and do random damage. No, like, this is the baseline trinket that I like. These are the good ones. 2 minute cooldown, lines up with Dark Soul, lines up with Demo, Big Tyrant. I'm a Warlock, so cooldown wise, 2 minutes is pretty strong for us. I definitely am keeping an eye on Flesh Render's Meat Hook as being one of the better on use trinkets, potentially for Season 4. I'm a Warlock POV. Now, as far as some other general items go, when it comes to Legion, there's obviously the one in Karazhan, the Healer Cloak from Maiden, Drape of Shame. Now, I'm a bit curious if they're going to keep the actual equip-based effects around. It's not working now currently, obviously, but equip increases the healing of your critical healing effects by 5%, which I'm pretty sure basically every healer wanted this when it came to Legion. They were all farming it up, whether they're Resto Druids or Holy Pallies or Priests. I'm pretty sure it's just a baseline extra bit of healing, right? So Big Drape of Shame play. Obviously, Iran's Relaxing Ruby, which is, was pretty good for a while. Ended up getting nerfed into the ground because it was really, really strong. I would assume it comes back in a nerfed form, but we will see. It is an equip trinket, and they are sort of hard to come by as far as good ones go in the Mythic Plus circuit. When it comes to actual BFA, we all know Mechagon. Number 1, Fire Mage Bracers from the final boss, Hyper Thread Wrist Wraps. I'm curious if this is going to actually make it live in the same form that it was at the end of BFA. Now, obviously, there was Masterful and Corruption and all that, which has further exacerbated that issue, but I'm curious if they're going to nerf these or not. But either way, every time I hear a mage talking about Season 4, the first thing they say, oh, Fire Mage Bracers, and with pretty good reason. But even outside of that, there is something of relevance in Mechagon for everybody, basically, and that is the actual rings, the logic loops. The first half being in Junkyard, Division, Maintenance, Recursion, and Synergy. I believe we used, from a Warlock, yeah, we used Recursion. And the second half being from the upper part, the Garden dude, Shortening Bitband, or Booting Bitband, Protecting, and Overclocking. So basically, 3 different spells in a row gives you a baseline amount of haste. And the actual secondary stats on these rings were also not reduced to compensate or to give a bit more room for the effect being there. So I'm hoping that these rings make it like 2 live in the form they were in BFA. Just, hey, they're regular rings with a regular amount of secondary stat distribution. And they also have this insane, hey, get this ring and get this ring. They make a pair and they give you a lot of haste. That'd be cool. I love farming sets like this in Mythic Plus and things like that. And hopefully you do too, because if not, well, probably gonna have to do it if they go live like this. So now as far as rating is concerned, which I assume a lot of people are, because you can actually purchase and target 3 raid items. Number 1 in Nathria, there's really not a whole lot of like relevance. I mean, there's once again secondary stat items like next, like this for example, big mastery, minor haste. There might not be ones like this in game right now, so that could be something you might want long term. But I'm really focused on like big trinkets and end boss loot, right? And as far as both those go, Kabbalist Hymnal is a big one. That's a lot of intellect, 171. Join the Crimson Chorus. Every minute you get a bunch of crit, and if you're in a party, this effect is increased by 5% for each member of the Crimson Chorus in said party. Now, I know Nathria was like 5 years ago. It's been a long time. I've aged a lot in Shadowlands, but Hymnal was like your best equipped trinket, and back in Nathria time, it beat out Changeling, I think by a decent bit when it came to like Mythic Changeling versus Mythic Hymnal. So once we get a bit more info, I'm curious to run the sims and see if Hymnal is still very good, but I'm assuming Hymnal is going to be one of, if not the best equip-based trinket for casters out there, because also having the option to stack groups with Hymnal for that extra added effect is very, very strong. And the fact that you can target it, and if it actually is as good as it seems, and guilds are being sort of serious about Season 4, I wouldn't be surprised if they said, hey, casters, you're buying Hymnal week 1, or week 3, because it takes 30 boss kills to target an item. But either way, Hymnal is number 1 on my list for, hey, keep an eye on it. So outside of Nathria going into Sanctum, there are a couple trinkets as well. I have the Jailer having Titanic Ocular Gland, which is a good trinket. Big baseline secondary stat increase. A bit of a decrease when it comes to going below half health. Not the best on prog or certain fights at times, but still solid. Baseline equip-based trinket. Solid effect. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. I think Hymnal will probably end up beating it out just because I'm a little biased there, but definitely worth keeping an eye on. And as far as the other trinket in Sanctum goes, it is the one from Remnant, Shadowed Orb of Torment. This trinket gained a lot of ground for Warlock towards the end of Sanctum, heading into Sepulchre. There's a big shift in mastery for Demo, wanting a lot more mastery than it did previously, and Shadowed Orb of Torment ended up sitting very, very high, even beating out like 265, 270 rubies in early prog. Obviously, doing damage to yourself is a bit of a pain. The effect is very, very strong. As far as Demo's concerned, Destro played it for a while with 2-minute build, and even Affliction played it. It's a very, very strong equip or on-use based trinket. So pairing this with a Hymnal, or even maybe with an Eye of the Jailer trinket like we had in SOD, could very well be a thing that's coming back. Also worth mentioning that, hey, there is indeed a weapon on KT, being Maledict Opus. There is not a weapon in Nathria on the Nathrius. There are tokens, but I'm pretty sure Bliss said the tokens aren't coming out in Season 4 or being of relevance. They're not going to be there. They're going to remove them. Whether they add the actual weapon to the boss or not, I'm not sure, but Maledict Opus is worth mentioning in Sanctum as far as KT is concerned. It's a big staff, easy to obtain, fills both slots, good to go. Also FNT being here, but this was sort of, mediocre. Now, as far as Sepulchre is concerned, we also have the main hand from Ragalon, the offhand from the Jailer. and like Royal Killer Irish, things like that. The big thing in here, though, that I'm looking at targeting, potentially, it's a Pantheon item. First Sigil. Dude, I still don't have a First Sigil. No Warlock in the guild does. And I'm going to say, we probably, myself, I don't know, I think most everybody probably slept on Sigil a good bit when it came to early prog and the tier being just released. It's an insane amount of verse on fights like Anduin, just big damage amps, Anduin Mythic Plus, big CD windows. It's a lot of verse, a lot of raw damage done, and a lot of extra damage reduced, like less damage taken. It might be a 5-minute cooldown, but when used effectively, First Sigil could very well be one of the best trinkets we've seen all expansion. What it can do in certain fights, in certain spots, is really, really strong. It's an item that I would want to keep my eye on. Now, pound for pound, Sigil at 5 minutes versus Shadow Over Torment, couldn't tell you. Versus Meat Hook, couldn't tell you. But over the next few weeks, when Season 4 hopefully gets fleshed out more on PTR, we know eye levels, things like that, hopefully, assuming. I am going to be running some sims and hopefully have a decently itemized BIS list compiled for hopefully Season 4's launch sometime in the next month and a half. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this video helped clarify a bit on, I guess, any questions you might have had about Season 4 based on what we know, which is not a whole lot at this point in time. I'm hoping that Season 4 drops some point in the next month and a half or so. I think there's probably going to be at least a month. Mainly just due to Blizz trying to give guilds that are trying to get Cutting Edge time, because Cutting Edge is going away. There's been some Anduin nerfs, and I would assume anything less than a month is probably going to be a bit too short. Month and a half, it's like almost mid-June at this point. Probably somewhere like early August is what I'm guessing on the safer side of things. But we'll see where it goes. Either way, when we have more info on eye level and gear dropping and how the upgrades, everything really actually works a whole lot, and it's open for testing on PTR, I'm going to try and work on a BIS list and things for Warlock in Season 4, taking into account both Mythic Plus and ratings. I think it'll be a lot of fun. There's a lot of new gear coming out, which is sort of like, it almost feels like a new expansion launching in a sense. There's new dungeons. I mean, the raids are the same, but also a little different. And yeah, Blizz has mentioned that Season 4 most likely will be a bit of a shorter season. They at least implied it in one of the more recent interviews they did, that it's probably going to be a bit shorter than 1, 2, and 3, which, looking at how long they were, I am more than okay with that. And hopefully that means that Dragonflight is on the horizon, at least something at some point later on this year, before 2023. But hey, you know, maybe wishful thinking. So, once again, any weekly orders or add-ons on the video, link down below to my Twitch, all for free there. If you want to swing by, grab them, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. And also, once again, one big shout out to my patrons. Thank you a million times, guys, for all support. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, it should be a link up here, as well as down in the video description below. And while you're down there, hit the like and sub buttons. It helps out a ton. If you have any questions that I might have missed in this video, drop them down in the comment section, and I will be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace!